Gentlemen, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Carter, 5 minutes for questions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Fowler, thank you for being here. Appreciate your attendance. As has been pointed out here, and as you well know, the Affordable Care Act created the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation and gave it pretty broad authority. In fact, I would submit too broad of authority, but nevertheless, the authority was given to test new payment models, and the intent was with saving money, saving taxpayers money. And CMMI has failed to create a budgetary savings, and instead has cost Americans billions of dollars, and even continues to increase in federal spending day by day. Unfortunately, the ACA also included a clause that attempted to block any administrative or judicial review of CMMI demonstration models and left the administrator as a key, potentially unaccountable arbiter of whether or not the law's requirements are being followed. Dr. Fowler, how do you specifically ensure that the statutory requirements of the for CMMI models are stringently adhered to?
Well, thank you for that question. And as someone who spent most of my career in public service, I do see myself and our organization as a careful steward of public dollars. It's very important to us to make sure that funding is accounted for and used for the purposes that Congress intended.
And please understand, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just saying it appears that this program is not working. And it appears that we don't have any input. Have you ever gone to Congress asking for any input on any of this? Are you familiar with the Doctors Caucus here in Congress?
I am familiar with the Doctors Caucus, and we would be happy to engage and have any conversation and take any input.
Well, please, we welcome you.
That would be fantastic. Thanks.
And I would ask you and encourage you also to consider working with the members of this committee, specifically of this subcommittee on health, to establish some kind of permanent mechanism for congressional input and oversight.
Thank you. We value input from Congress as well as any other stakeholders that comes with new ideas and input on models and how they're working and how they're transforming care.
Well, let me ask you a direct question. Yes or no, do you believe CMMI has been successful at improving patient outcomes and lowering cost?
I do believe we've been successful.
At lowering cost?
In some of our models, we have generated savings.
How many of those models?
6 models have generated savings on a net basis that are statistically significant. More models than that have generated savings on a gross basis, but may not, once you account for some of the investments that we're making, for example, in primary care, the net impact has not been savings, but we still think that for every model we've tested, we've learned something important.
And that's important. It's important to learn, and we acknowledge that and value that. But at the same time, we've got $34.5 trillion in debt in this country, so we're looking to stop the bleeding. And this just appears to be an area. I mean, so far as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, CMMI has launched over 50 models, and 30 of them are operational today, but only 4 of those models ever qualified to be expanded.
We think the success of the models exceeds the 4 models that were expanded through certification. We think that some of the learnings and some of the results and the evaluations have generated a lot of important learnings that have really informed our work going forward and hopefully been valuable to providers who have participated in the model.
Well, let me ask you this. Given the fact that the CMMI did not use the entirety of its first allocation of $10 billion and the CBO forecast that it will not exhaust its second tranche of funding prior to receiving its next tranche of $10 billion in 2030. Do you believe that $10 billion is the appropriate amount of mandatory funding for Congress to provide to CMMI?
Well, I wasn't here for the first decade
Understood.
of our existence, but I can
Fair
say,
enough.
now that I am here, that it does take about 18 to 24 months to get a model out and into the field, and so that may account for the first decade. I think for the second decade, we have a plan to spend the money that's been allocated to the Innovation Center.
So you base your plan on the money that's been allocated and not necessarily the money or just whatever you may need for your plan?
We have a plan to spend the money that's been allocated to.
Like every agency in the federal government does, whatever you're allocated, you spend that money. Mr. Chairman, I thank you, and thank you, Dr. Fowler. And please, again, we have a doctor's caucus in this Congress. We have a lot of institutional knowledge here. We want to help, and I'm very disturbed that this program somehow has escaped congressional review and congressional input. And I would appeal to you to please utilize the Congress, particularly this subcommittee.
We would welcome that input. Thank you.
Thank you, and I hope you will not only welcome it, but solicit it. So, thank you. Now you'll back.